Those Were the Days is filmed before a live internet audience.
That's right, it's time for Those Were the Days, the show where we look at classic TV through a modern lens with nostalgic eyes. This episode is all about the mother of all classics, I Love Lucy, Season 3, Episode 27. The special guest is Tennessee Ernie Ford. Yes, it's Those Were the Days starring Audie Norman.
Yes, it is.
Amy Frost.
I don't like to brag, but I do have quite the hitch in my get along.
TV's Travis.
I am just happier than a three-legged dog to be here. Tell you what.
Oh, that's right. I'm so excited to have you guys here. I'm so excited to be talking about I Love Lucy, one of my all-time favorite shows. So, as we get into this, which I don't think that's a secret. Most of the world, this is one of their all-time favorite shows. You know, Vitamina Vegemin and the Conveyor Belt at the Chocolate Factory are two of like TV's most classic of classic things. But we're not talking about those today. No, we're talking about special guests. And this show had a plethora of special guests across its run. It was real difficult to pick an episode for me. I love so many of these and so many of the guests that showed up. But the one that frequently pops into my head that I quote over and over and over is the Tennessee Ernie Ford episode. So as we usually do when we take off, I want to get a baseline of everybody's I Love Lucy world. Like, how do you guys feel about the show? Is it a favorite? Is it not? Let's go with Amy first.
So, I don't know how much of it I've actually ever sat down and watched. I mean, Nick at Night staple back in the day at some point, I'm sure. Like I'm aware of it as like a cultural phenomenon. But I don't know how much I've actually watched. I mean, I've enjoyed all of it that I've watched. But yeah, that's about it for me. Like it's not I never think of it, like I mean Lucille Ball is obviously an icon and it's, groundbreaking for so many reasons. But yeah, I just sort of have that baseline it exists knowledge for the most part.
It is in a space, and you've occupied that space once or twice with the show. Yeah, I got you. I know I've got a handful. Andy Griffith is mine for that particular thing. I'm aware of it. It's a cultural touchstone for people. I never watched it, so that works. I can relate to that. Travis, how about you?
So fairly similar. Like I definitely have watched plenty of episodes of I Love Lucy, but for me, it's more of the knowledge of it in the culture than it is like a deep knowledge of I Love Lucy as a show. I didn't sit down and watch that necessarily. I never sought it out, but like, of course, Lucille Ball, icon, just amazing human being, and all the things that she championed and things that she changed, Desi and the things that happened with this show, especially that were firsts,
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as like just sitting down watching it, I mean, I couldn't tell you a lot of plots of many of the episodes, but yet I enjoy every time I do watch it.
Sure.
I watch it and I'm just like, as I sit down and watch it, I'm like, of course it makes sense. This is brilliant. Is it like I was laughing out loud many times during this episode?
Yeah.
It's stuff that holds up. So
Right on. Audie, how about you?
Well, I'm going to echo the sentiments of my fellow co-hosts. And apologies to listeners. I'm getting over a sinus infection, and it's been a pain in the butt. So, but no, this is one of those shows that, yeah, I know of culturally. I think the most times I've ever watched it is when I was in a house with an older person who had control of the television and they were watching it. But it's one of those shows that if that's what they're watching, you're like, thank God we're watching this, because it's so
It'd be
good,
so much
because it's so
worse.
funny. It's like there's so much, yeah, there could be much other terrible television old person could be watching, but they pick this, and you're like, thank God. but I think we all have some of it in our memory banks just because of the culture of the show and the way that culture has carried on through things. Like I think a lot of the culture of I Love Lucy I learned probably through like um Looney Tunes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
doing
Yep.
riffs on it and stuff. So
Oh yeah.
I've got casual knowledge of it. I was thinking about it just a second ago, and weirdly, there are times where I would come home and not because it was that big a deal to me, but I would come home and my wife could attest to this and go, Lucy, I'm home.
Yep.
Yep.
Just because it's stuck in my head.
No.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Or
Yeah.
anybody that ever says you've got splain,
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Explain
got
this
some
to me,
explaining
like
to do.
like
Yep.
any of that. That's you
Hmm.
just know that because the Amy's background, if you're able to see the video, is the sitcom living room, and like that is a iconic living room
Hmm.
into the kitchen with like the pass through window, all of that stuff. Like you just remember it.
Yeah.
And
It's
I mean, I was just gonna say real quick, that has such a thing. Like that is such a cultural touchstone that it was recently in WandaVision. Like
Mhm.
they
Yep.
purposely made their set look as close to that inside a house as they could. So I mean, it's something nobody forgets.
Yeah, and that was actually one of the things they kind of pioneered. I Love Lucy was one of those shows that taught the rest of the world how to make quality sitcom television, and
Yeah.
it was because of this one set that they would just use over and over. The kitchen and the living room. Most of the things took place in that one set, and they used the 3 camera shoot was relatively new. They used it mainly in movies and a handful of other shows, but they really pioneered it with I Love Lucy and how to do it with a sitcom. And one of the things I was reading some facts about the show and how it worked. This was one of the first shows, if not the first show, to be shot in front of a live studio audience as a sitcom. And one of the things that was a result of that, and you see this a couple times in the show, is they didn't reshoot stuff. They did this like a play and they recorded it. And so that's
Hmm.
why you have audiences laughing, and they didn't want to break things up and have the edits like break things in half and be like, okay, well they're laughing here, and then when we cut, they're going to be laughing. The sound of laughter will be different because it'll come from a different camera, from a different scene, or whatever. So they just shot everything at the same time, and they did it on 35 millimeter film. And because broadcasting kind of sucked in 1954 or 51, they would actually ship those tapes to the East Coast to be rebroadcast fresh from this side of the country. Because when they tried to broadcast television all the way over, it would lose so much quality. So this is one of the first shows that was considered HD for the time for everybody that wanted to watch it, which
Wow.
was they Desi said he wanted the show better quality on the East Coast. They said, "Well, what are you going to do?" He said, "Well, I'm just going to tape the whole thing and send it to you." And they were like, "Can you do that?" "Yeah, I don't know." "Yes." And they just figured it out.
Sure.
Um, which I love stories
Sometimes
like that.
Yeah, sometimes that's what it is. You come up with the solution, you come up with the end result, and then you form your solution to that.
Yeah, I
You know,
don't know how
I'm
to
gonna
do
take
it.
this thing and send it out. How? Well,
Hmm.
I don't know. We'll figure that part out, but that's what we're gonna do.
Yeah, yeah. It's stories like that make me real happy. The ignorance that led to innovation, like GoldenEye. No one knew how to make 4 person shooters. That wasn't these guys had never made a game before, and they're like, we'll make sure we could put 4 people on the screen at once. Nobody had ever done that. They didn't even know they couldn't do it, so they did it. Which is always fascinating to me and one of my favorite kind of creative stories.
Oh
But
yeah.
anyway, bringing it back to I Love Lucy and the special guest. So I kind of went weird on you, and I took a classic special guest inside a classic television show, and I did not know that much about Ernie Ford, aside from an excuse to put this episode of I Love Lucy into our show. I knew that he was somebody. That was a thing, and I went and did a little bit of research on Mr. Ernie Ford. Um, Basically, this show and a handful of other things are his claim to fame. He was a radio guy, a DJ who was born in Bristol, Tennessee, so he's an actual Tennessean. That's important to note because some of the jokes in this show are a little off color, and you're like, are they allowed to say that? They are, because he's from Tennessee, so it's okay. He's making fun of
Yeah.
himself.
Hmm.
But he worked with radio right out of high school. went to World War II like a lot of folks did around the time, and eventually found his way to California, where he started a early morning DJ show for a radio station in San Bernardino called Bar Nothing Ranch Time, and it was a country gospel hour in the morning.
Pet.
Uh, and in order to set himself apart, he created the persona of Tennessee Ernie Ford. That was not, it's
Mm.
not the way he talks, it's not the way he behaves. He does what all of us wish we could do, is inhabit a character that catches fire. Um, and that's what Tennessee Ernie did. It got him attention, it got him this cultural movement around him. He was a big celebrity in the radio world, and eventually made his way to doing more television. And I Love Lucy is one of those things that kind of put him on the map. Beyond I Love Lucy, after that, he went on and made The Ford Show, which, funny enough, Ford Motor Company sponsored, and it was like a double entendre for Ford and Ford, even though he wasn't related to them, which they thought that was real clever. And he had a bunch of guests. He actually show ran for 5 seasons. It was a variety show of him doing stuff. And one thing that we'll bring up later, the big claim to fame for him was a rendition of 16 Tons, the coal miner song, that we'll play in a little bit if you don't recognize it. But that was his big thing. He had a big hit in that, and that's the version of that song, 16 Tons, that most people remember. When they think of that song, they're probably thinking of the Ernie Ford version of him snapping his fingers. So anyway, that's Ernie Ford. That's who he is. But let's talk about Tennessee Ernie Ford in I Love Lucy. So this show opens with Lucy getting a letter from her mom, which I thought was pretty funny because the long distance calling wasn't a thing. So
Yeah.
when she got the letter, by the time she got the letter, Tennessee Ernie Ford is on his way, and they definitely have this moment where you learn that Ricky and Lucy's mom, they do not have a good relationship. Ricky,
Right.
it's not good, and it's definitely one of the first times I think the trope of mother-in-law hates the
Yep.
son-in-law appears.
There's a
Um,
lot of them in this episode. A lot of those that I'm like, it came from here? Wait,
yeah.
it's that old?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we can talk about these scenes as they come in, but the introduction of Ernie walking in the door, and sitting down and telling his story. I don't know about you guys, but I was crying, listening to his. Yeah.
One quick thing. Back up to that letter. From
Yeah,
the
let's
mother.
back up. Interrupt me because I'll keep going unless you got something to say.
Because first we start off with, to make a long story short, and Desi's like, too late. I was just, that had me dying right at the beginning.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Well,
And
it
then
had me dying when she's reading it, and he's like, "Why does she always address it to my daughter Lucy and that guy?"
What's his name? Or
And what's his name? And then she reads it, and it's to my daughter Lucy, dear Lucy and Xavier.
Yeah.
And he's like, Xavier?
And Lucy's like, just be glad she got a Latin name this time, dude.
yeah.
Well, she's going in
Like-
the right direction.
And right there, for just a second, I am super impressed with how progressive this show is of
Mhm.
having a white woman married to a Latin man and how
Mhm.
much they play with that without seeming racist at all. Like,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
it's like they understand each other's culture and accept it, which you would hope they would as being a married couple. But like the way they talk about it was impressive.
Yeah. And it was one of the issues they had getting the show made because they didn't believe that audiences would believe that Lucy and Desi were
Mhm.
actually married. Because why would an American woman marry a foreign man? That's ridiculous.
Right.
You know?
But my one other thing about the letter is describing the relationship
Mhm.
of Ernest. Her mother's friend's roommate's cousin's middle boy.
Which-
Did anybody immediately flash the Spaceballs? Or was that just me?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yep. 100%.
I was like, the Schwartz is with this one.
Yeah, and I was watching her read that letter, and I'm convinced she was really reading those pieces of paper because there was very
Mhm.
beautiful cursive writing on the back of that.
Yeah.
Maybe you couldn't see that on a 480i television set, but these days you could see
Right.
that text, and it looked like
Yep.
it looked like my grandma's handwritten letter. So that was pretty awesome. Yeah. So basically, right after they get done reading this letter, they're like bracing for him to show up, and he shows up that night. Ernie Ford comes in, showing up at the home of the Ricardos.
The Ricardos.
I'm just looking to figure out how to get to the Ricardos. And then regales this story of his first visit to New York. And this is when I was in stitches. Because he's talking about how do you get to the... And I'm just imagining him on the streets of New York, obviously in my modern day New York brain, just going, how do I get to the Ricardos? Somebody saying, take the subway. He wanders down into this hole in the ground where a bunch of folks are just staring at a ditch. There's just every piece of that. His delivery is what stunned me. For him being this being the first time, I think a lot of people had probably seen him on television. He was known for the radio. He nails this. And it's so good because he's so straight faced. And there are multiple moments in this story where Lucy and Ricky are breaking. And you can tell they're breaking. There was a moment where Ricky's actually covering his face. Because it's so good. Talking about the gap. Somebody done opened up a gap and all these people was a pushing and a shoving to get into the subway. And then like Lucy, even when she asks like what happened after that, she's laughing. And it really does go to show that this was unedited. They just shot it.
I miss that. Like I miss those little I mean, they're still keeping it together. They're still doing
Yeah.
the show, but they're people.
Well,
That's great.
there's something to like people that are professionals in their field, especially comedians, getting broken during a
Oh
thing,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's like when you watch SNL and somebody not named Andy Samberg starts laughing at their own joke, right? Like Bill Hader breaking during doing Stefan or something like that. Like it's just
Or literally
that's-
anyone that had to work with Robin Williams.
Yes,
Yes,
Just
exactly.
Yeah.
Like,
Good Lord.
it's
Can't do it.
how good is that person? Like Tennessee, like Ernie Ford in that scene is so good and
good.
so locked in that he breaks Lucy and Desi, and on top of that, you got a whole studio audience of people just laughing at him.
Yeah.
Right.
And he's perfect. Like by this point, he's perfected this character that he plays, right? So it's like he just is this version of
Right.
Ernie Ford, and he just does it, and it's so perfect. Like it was killing me. He tells the whole story, and then he ends it with like, and that thing never did come out the tunnel.
He never did feel like I'd get it out of that ditch. Yeah, and the I told a joke that got me because he dropped him off. You walked all the way here from Long Island, and he says, "Well, ding dong if it ain't." He said, "What? A Long Island?"
Yeah,
It's like that is so good, and you get into this place where you can relate. Like because you've all been into a situation where someone has assumed something about a scenario that you were not ready for. And in this case, Ernie Ford has assumed he'll be sleeping at Lucy and Ricky's house. They were not aware of this. So Ricky's all like, well, I know it's late because it's like, what was it, 9 p.m. And he said he should have been in bed an hour ago. Yeah, well, we wouldn't keep you. You go get some sleep. Where do I sleep? Oh, Lord. And that's where the situation comedy comes in.
Yeah, it does.
So when they bring in the rollaway bed, like that already is brilliant. And I've seen that before. Like I can remember in high school on like track and cross country trips where we would pack like 8 guys in a hotel room. And so they'd bring in one of those rollaway cots and you'd unfold it and do whatever. So I'm seeing that happen, and that's great. But then to have it where they're like, okay, we're going to go to bed, and they go to bed and they're in their bedroom, and it's Ricky going out to take the blanket out, and then he comes back in to get Lucy. That reveal shot when they come back into the room and he's laying with his feet on the chair through the folded up rollaway bed and his pillow on top of his suitcase.
Listen, I just spent a week at my parents' house sleeping on the couch in the den, and I was like, I understand, sir. Yeah, I'm right there with you, my friend.
I've been in a vacation with my wife's family. Same.
They
Very
just,
much
yes,
same.
Yes, I
I love how
understand.
much he used that dang suitcase as some piece of furniture. When he
Yeah.
first walked in, he sets it down. It's his chair.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
He used
Oh.
it here.
It's
Oh, and just before going to bed, one of my favorite jokes. He's walking out this way,
oh yeah.
walking out that way,
Where are you
and he
going?
whispers to Ricky,
Mr. Ricky.
and we're all like, "What?" And he whispers back, he's like, "It's in the house,
Yes.
the bathroom."
So
So
as
good.
I'm watching that scene, I see him go into the kitchen. He goes outside, and that's when
Mhm.
I could see where the joke was going. As soon as he
Right.
walks out the door, I'm like, oh, he's looking. He's
I
going
didn't
out for the outhouse.
I didn't get it till he whispered to
And
Ricky, and then I was like, oh.
and for him to then come back in and then go out the other door, and then
Mhm.
because you couldn't talk about the bathroom
Sure.
on TV
Right.
back then.
Mhm.
This was before Psycho came out, so nobody had ever even seen a toilet flush on screen.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The Brady Bunch
And
didn't
we
have
never,
one.
yeah, we never see the bathroom. But I just love that where he just has to whisper to him, and Ricky's like, through the bedroom.
Yeah. Where else would it be? And that's a reality because this is 1954. I mean,
Right.
it seems like everyone should have indoor plumbing. There's a huge chunk of Appalachia that was still without that kind of luxury, you know?
Oh yeah.
And so this is a completely believable scenario, along with mom writing a
Mhm.
letter to say, Ernie's coming to visit. But
Right.
so this part also stands out. It shows a little bit of the Ricardos' life in New York. Ricky's an entertainer at a nightclub. He probably gets
Mhm.
home at 4 in the morning.
Yeah.
Most
Right.
evenings. It's 9 p.m. and they have invited the Mertzes over to play cards. I'm 37.
Yeah. I was like, he's like,
No.
it's 9:15. I'm supposed to go to bed. And I'm like, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, what is
Yes.
wrong with you? Of
Can
course you're
we?
going to bed. Like, wait, the Mertzes aren't over playing cards and like going home? Because they should be done by now. Like, this is sacred time. So you
Yeah,
get
9
this.
o'clock is the going home time.
Yeah, this is not the come over time. Like, if you're still at my house after 9, I'm going to politely ask you to leave. It's time to go.
Mhm.
Roll the fold out.
Yeah.
Fold out. Go,
They're like, the
have a
baby's
good night.
yeah, the baby's asleep. It's like, what? Baby's asleep. You sleep. What's wrong with you?
Mhm.
Mhm.
But yeah, so Ricky is very upset that Ernie has basically moved in and taken over their living room and says, "Y'all go on to bed, night night," and then he's just tore up and he's tossing and turning, which leads us to him coming out to take Ernie a blanket, finding him tucked between the kivers, in that rollaway bed.
Now, Lucy and Ricky have matching pajamas, and if that's not
Yes.
couple goals, I don't know what is.
Oh, it
Yeah,
was so great.
that was great.
So good.
Uh-huh.
I do want to normalize the smoking jacket, the tie, and the nice slacks and shoes at home.
Yeah.
Because that was,
Yeah.
I mean, Ricky looked like a boss.
Good
Let's
look.
be serious. That
Mhm.
was, I
Oh,
wish
yeah.
I looked half that cool. But sleeping in full pants and a long sleeve shirt, pajamas, no, thank you. Couldn't manage that. I don't think I did do that once when Stephanie and I were dating, and I was visiting her in West Virginia. We both still live with our parents, and I was like, I'm gonna be staying with her parents at her house. I need some PJs. So me and my mom went to Walmart. Like I was like 18, 19, and got Dick Van Dyke style I Love Lucy, PJs. I loved them. I was like, I feel like I'm a
Of course you did.
grown man. Yeah, I'm the 8-year-old that loves Taxi. Just to recap.
Yeah.
Like surprise, surprise.
Yeah, who's shocked?
just-
No one.
This all tracks.
Yes.
The other great part was like, here's Ricky, and he's in bed, and he's like tossing and turning, and he can't get comfortable, and he asks Lucy what time it is. She's like, it's 10:30. It feels like I've been in bed for 6 months. Because again, he would still be at the club.
Oh
Yeah.
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 Right,
Like that's his
I was gonna
normal,
say.
like, not even close to being done.
yeah.
Anytime I
love-
try to go to bed early, quote unquote, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like my body knows when I normally go to bed, and if I don't wait at least until then, it's like, yeah, this ain't gonna work, pal. Good luck.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So this after they wake up and they've settled, he slept there that night. This is when we discover the real problem. Ernie thinks he lives with them now. He's got this idea in his head that they've taken him in, and he's only got two. What did he said he had like 50 cents left to his name, and
Yeah.
he was real
Yeah.
worried about what he was going to do in New York till they had taken him in, and he could call that home. And that's when the panic sets in. And the worst part is he's so sweet about it. He's
He is
like,
so
yeah.
sweet.
he's so sweet. You all just opened your home and your hearts to me, and it's like, how did you kick him out after that? Like,
I
Ricky's
mean,
like,
they're sweet
"You-
enough to feed him. They
Sure.
keep buying groceries for him.
sure.
You got 50 cents for all your expenses, your hotel bills.
Yeah, they did suddenly throw that in there. And he just keeps going right past the hotel. Like, no, what it just goes right
yeah.
over his head. No, I'm staying with you, of course. Yeah, so and then we get to the point where it's a little bit obviously wearing on Ricky and Lucy, and they have to do something about it because Lucy even tells Ethel that he's a bottomless pit, and
I
he's
love Ethel
really
so much.
he's really made himself at home at their place, playing guitar at all hours of the day, and that
6
kind of thing.
a.m.
Yeah, 6 a.m. up and around him. But I mean, he was going to bed at 8 normally. That
Yeah,
I could see
that's
that.
fair.
Yeah.
You know,
Let me tell you, as a parent, if you get up and wake up my child that early in the morning, you better watch out what I'm going to do with that guitar.
oh yeah, I'll shove it somewhere. That's for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
He
But
fixed Ricky's maracas.
oh shoot, I forgot about him fixing Ricky's maracas because they were
Yeah,
broken.
that was great because that's such a great line. I was practicing and thought I was going deaf.
and his moves in that kitchen to show that they're not working are top notch. He
Yes.
went all out.
He
Loved
is-
it.
He's an entertainer through and through. Doesn't know when to
Yes.
quit. Yeah, if somebody took the beads out of my maracas that I had since I was 4, I would kill them. Like they would be dead. I don't care how sweet they've been. It's like you are leaving this house immediately.
and then and then Lucy's like, so she's trying to calm him down, and she says something about like, well, what about my mother? And he's like, you do not want to ask me that question right now.
So
It was
good.
such a great
That was
reaction.
great.
It was perfect.
He gets so stone faced. It'd been so long since I watched I Love Lucy that I had forgotten their relationship, like to the extent of like she's always the kind of the cut up, and he's always the straight man. But the
Yeah.
way they do that together is so good. Like he's always
Mhm.
very irritated. You can see it on his
Mhm.
face. But then they immediately come together to scheme how they're going to get rid of him. Because we get another
Yes.
letter, or a letter from that Ernie is going to send out. I can't remember how that happened. I know Ernie wrote it.
Yeah.
And she's reading
'Cause-
this letter.
Yeah, because he asks Lucy to check the spelling.
Oh, that's right.
Because if his mom can't read, but if she finds somebody to read it, he doesn't want her to be embarrassed by his spelling.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
So she's reading this, and in there is the line that he needs to watch out for those wicked city women. Because he said, if I see any of those wicked city women, I will come straight back home. So this
Yep.
turns the gears for Ricky and Lucy. Like, hey, we got to figure out where we're going to find a wicked city woman. So where's the closest wicked city woman? Why, our aspiring actress, Lucy Ricardo. Totally could pull that off. So we come to the next scene where Ernie's sitting playing guitar loudly on the couch, and the doorbell's ringing. And who's at the door but a wicked city woman, which is actually Lucy in a very poor disguise. Like if Ernie couldn't see through this, he's just blind. Like he has no flipping clue. And she reminded me of this children's book.
Well,
This children's book when I was a kid, where there's a character called Viola La Swamp, and that's what she looked like.
Yes.
Mhm.
She looked like Viola La Swamp.
I did not make that connection, but you're spot on.
Somebody else remembers
Holy
Viola La
crap.
Swamp. That's great. Yeah, black hair, black dress. She's looking pretty terrifying for a wicked city woman. And then I'm sitting there trying to figure out, okay, this is 1954. How do we handle the what they're trying to allude to here with these wicked
The
city
vamping.
women? The vamping.
Mhm.
We vamp him.
Oh my gosh.
And you're like, okay, because this is where we get her walking is ridiculous.
Oh my gosh, that walk.
Good.
So good. It's a catwalk, but like way different. It's like
It's a catwalk, but the cat has tape on its feet.
yes, yes. Yeah, it's a catwalk with tape on her feet. That's really good. Love it. So she gets over there and she lets him know I'm a wicked city woman. And he says no.
Oh.
and she backs him into a corner and then says, "What are you gonna do to me? I'm gonna vamp you." And then she just puts her hand on his head and just starts rubbing his hair while doing her little like weird catwalk stand still wiggle thing. And he says, "Are you vamping me?" She says, "Yeah, I like it." And then it all goes sideways. It's
All wrong.
Then
Yep.
she's like, no.
then
Oh,
she's
no.
going no, and then we're into like some pretty sketch material for 1954, where
Oh, yeah.
where Ernie Ford is basically chasing her around the house. Which, by the way, anybody else feel like he was walking like a toddler with a diaper full? You know, like he
Little
kind of
bit.
had like a full diaper gait to him.
Yeah.
He's chasing, which is probably fine. He is childlike, you know, so it's fine.
Mhm.
But she's trying to get away at this point, and all pretenses of Wicked City Woman are gone, and he still doesn't know she's Lucy, which is shocking. And it makes you real glad, too, that you realize that they're not related. You know, he's not cousin Ernie,
Yeah.
unless you're in
Mhm.
Tennessee and
No.
everybody's
Yeah.
cousin.
Everybody's cousin.
Yeah.
Right.
It's, you know, it wouldn't be a country bumpkin without an incest joke somewhere in there.
Yeah.
So they got to put that in there.
For sure.
And so they're running around all over the house, chasing in and outdoors till Lucy finally runs into Ricky. Is like, "Ah, there you are," you know. And then the episode kind of abruptly ends. We don't have a resolution to
Yeah.
Ernie. It's just he's gonna be here forever because he's not afraid of Wicked City Woman like we were hoping he would be. But it did lead me to want to watch more episodes featuring him in the show. But that's the whole deal. Like I forgot how short these could be. I mean, they're like 6 minutes longer than a show today. Was the average show now is 18 minutes of actual content. Back then it was 25.
Probably.
Yeah.
But
Is it that short? Wow.
yeah, it's gotten pretty intense. We all watch streaming shows that are like, who cares about time? I want
Yeah,
2.5
yeah.
hours.
39 and a half minutes. Oh, yeah.
It's like you're not allowing me any consistency television. Like I need to know when I can if I can watch.
Tell
one.
time. It's going to be 2 Sesame Streets and a Mr. Rogers, and then we're going to go. Fantastic.
Yep,
Thank
there you go. That is very much how I watched this show as a kid. I would turn on the TV and I knew I could watch one episode of this and one episode of Dick Van Dyke and it was sleepy time. Then I had to turn the TV off and go to bed. That's how my clock worked. But yeah, like overall, I would love to get your impressions on the show. I mean, we've obviously laughed a lot, so clearly we had a really good time. Is there any standout scenes that we've gone over that we enjoyed that were particularly fun that you just loved? Travis, we'll start with you.
I mean, for me, it's them walking out and seeing him sleeping in that rollaway bed, like tucked through there like that, where it never dawned on him to unlatch the elastic band holding it together at
They
all.
presumably continue to let him sleep that way
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
because he makes mention of it not being easy.
Yes, in his letter. And just
They
that,
roll with it.
like, there's so many moments in this episode that were great, but that's the one where
Mhm.
I lost it at that point. I'm like, that and then Lucy's little catwalk hip gyrations
That's awesome.
were just priceless.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Amy?
Yeah, no, it's got to be Wicked City Woman. Like
Yeah.
she's gold. The door opened and I was like, I just want a beer. Like this is perfect. All of this is perfect. These are called taking notes. Yes, very good. Vamping, excellent. Okay.
Mhm.
Oh, remember that one.
Just I'm gonna use that. That's good. Yeah, it was the funniest. Like because like I'm watching it for the show, right? Like
Mhm.
I'm trying to, sort of pay different attention than you would just watching the show. But like that whole part, I was just cackling. It was so funny.
That's awesome. Audie, do you have anything?
I mean, pretty much everything we've talked about. The
Yeah.
one thing I forgot about that I made a note of is like when Fred brings the bed in and they leave, he says, "Say goodnight to little Abner." And my comic dork brain was just like, "Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I haven't heard little Abner in forever.
Mm.
Oh my gosh. This thing is old. Oh my gosh." Like, FYI for you kids out there, Little Abner was a newspaper comic strip that ran at the time of I Love Lucy, and it was about a hillbilly
Oh wow.
bumpkin and the whole town and in an Appalachia kind of town. So it was like a perfect joke for the time.
That's
But if
amazing.
you didn't know that comic strip and what it was about, you'd be like, okay, called him a funny name, whatever. But like comic history dork who knows Little Abner, I was like, oh wow, that's hilarious.
Oh,
That
that's
was a great
amazing.
little
Yeah,
joke.
I had no
I mean,
idea.
yeah, it's a 70-year-old pop culture reference
Yeah.
in the show. It's
Hmm.
just that we're so far removed from it that we wouldn't have that frame of reference. But that's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that's super cool. Yeah, I think what stunned me, and I shouldn't be surprised, as a classic TV lover, but how much this show it holds up, right? Like, I mean, every
Mhm.
joke was
Absolutely.
spot on and still is funny now. And I think about like, did they know, were they going for that when they were originally writing it, or did they just know this is going to stand the test of time? Because there are an enormous amount of shows that just they might not hold up, or some of the episodes don't do right, or it's just culturally irrelevant at some point. And this show's just got it. Like I think there's a reason that it's still relevant today, and people still dress like Lucy to cosplay and stuff. You know, like
Hmm.
it's I don't know if it was written intentionally to stand the test of time, but I mean it does. Reruns weren't a thing, so who knows? They didn't know syndication was going to be a possibility.
Hmm.
No, I think it's just a testament to skill and talent of
Yeah,
knowing how to tell good jokes.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Well,
this
Because if you,
basic plot, you could plug it into just about any sitcom today.
I
yeah,
was
Like, this
about to
could have
say,
been an
yeah.
episode of Friends, easy. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah,
Like, maybe you tone down, where he's actually from. You know what I mean? Like, you change it up a little bit, but like, somebody shows up, all of a sudden and now thinks that they live there. Like, yeah, that literally any other sitcom could do
Well, I
it.
mean,
Like,
it's
that's
the
a good
whole
point.
premise of Perfect Strangers. Like
that's
they ran
true.
that joke for however many seasons. So like it's just a matter of execution, and they executed it perfectly in this show.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and they do so many of these things with such a limited toolbox. Like you got the FCC breathing down your neck, and they're like, you can smoke all over television, but you can't, belly buttons, no, sex jokes, no, allusions to
Twin
sex
beds.
jokes, no,
Yeah, man and
twin
wife in
beds,
a single bed.
yeah,
Which,
yeah.
let me tell you, porcelain figurines on the headboard, regardless of them being separate beds, is still a bold choice.
It really
That's
was,
very true.
really was.
Watching Ricky toss and turn, and I'm like, no, those figurines are not gonna make it, you guys.
Well, and another thing too is like a show like this where you have 4 characters in the show and then they bring in a 5th. There are 5 actors in this entire show. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
There's no minor characters. There's no side characters at all. Everything takes place in the apartment. And when you're constrained like that, your humor, I think, can grow from it out of those
Mhm.
constraints because
Yeah.
Sure.
it forces the creativity. Because you have to be more creative with your jokes when you've only got so many people there.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And you're not doing a bunch of reshoots and edits and things like that. And you're staging it more like a play and kind of all of that. So yeah, I think that worked to its benefit in a lot of ways.
oh yeah, and I can just imagine doing like your read throughs and your rehearsal, and then doing it just in front of an audience, just like a play, and getting
Mhm.
that that audience reaction, knowing that those jokes are hitting because you're hearing actual people laugh. Like it's actually funny. They could throw the show away if they wanted to at the end if not enough laughs came out, but
Right.
they were going to shoot for that every time. One fun piece of trivia, and I don't know if this occurred in this show, I wasn't paying close enough attention, but there is frequently in I Love Lucy episodes a voice going, "Uh oh," from the audience anytime Lucy's about to get into trouble. That is Lucille Ball's mother, who attended every single live
No.
taping. And every time you hear "oh" in the audience, that's her. It shocked me. I was like, that makes it so real, because
Mhm.
now we're coming into a time where there's so many laugh tracks, and you know when there's
Yeah.
laugh tracks, and I know what it's for. It's to make you feel comfortable laughing at home when you're by yourself. You're not laughing by yourself if other people are laughing. So
Right.
Yeah.
it's by design, but having that pure laugh that's different every episode outside of Lucy's mom is such a better experience. It's such a better experience to hear that. They had I believe it was the longest laugh in recorded television of 65 seconds on one of their episodes that they ended up having to redo it a couple times. They did have to edit together that episode. I might have been, I think it was the Harpo Marx episode. It was the episode I was going to pick before I thought of this one. And they do the famous mirror gag where Harpo Marx, and Lucy's dressed like him because he doesn't show up to some party, and she's like gonna fake it. And then he shows up and she doesn't want to know that it's her. So they pretend to be a mirror of each other, and they do this amazing mirror gag where she's doing the exact same thing Harpo's doing, but he wouldn't do the same thing every time. He wanted to improv the whole thing. So they had to they had this huge laugh, and they had to cut everything together because he was bonkers, and she was so excited to meet him, and then he just did not do anything he was supposed to do. So that's a twofer for this episode of Those Were the Days. You can go watch that Harpo Marx episode, which I couldn't find. That was part of the reason I didn't use that one. It's episode 28 or something of season 4, and it wasn't available.
That was something I noticed, and I was kind of annoyed by that. Is there are like episode gaps
Yeah.
in?
Yeah.
I found this on Hulu. There was also on Amazon Prime in the U.S. and like there were gaps in episodes because there's another Ernie Ford episode.
Yeah.
That's supposed to take place right after the one that we watched.
Mhm.
That just isn't available.
Yeah.
I couldn't find it anywhere.
And I can't help but wonder if it's a licensing thing. Like, did they use some music they weren't allowed to?
I was gonna say, 'cause didn't they used to sometimes wouldn't Ricky do musical numbers at the end sometimes?
That's what I'm thinking.
Like,
It's
Yeah.
gotta have something.
I
to do with
vaguely
that.
remember that, so it's got to be something like that. Like it's something stupid, and I hate it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's licensing. It's the reason we couldn't
cool,
get
like,
Wonder
let's have
Years
it.
on TV for like years
Yeah.
because there's so much popular culture, popular music in it. But yeah, if you can find it, if you're listening to this show and you did not watch the Tennessee Ernie Ford episode, I highly recommend checking it out and laughing
Yes,
along with
watch
us. I did actually do some captures, some sound clips, taking a note from Travis there because he's the master of that. But I went for it, and I got a few really good Ernie Ford sound clips. Here's one of the first times we meet him, or this is when the Wicked City Woman shows up.
You got quite a hitch in your get along.
I want to use that one. That was just a good example of Ernie. This one cracked me up too. I died at this phrasing, and I'm going to use it as often as I possibly can.
Cousin Lucy, somebody's sitting on your doorbell.
I am just going to find a way to use that in casual conversation. Amy, I caught this one for you.
I'm a wicked city woman.
No!
No.
No.
That's what sells that moment. Like
Yeah,
her
absolutely does.
delivery and her voice for Wicked City Woman is great, but then it's his reaction that drives it home.
It's this absolute just overplayed. No, what my mama warned me about. And then I got a couple things because this was a special guest episode. It's all about Ernie Ford, so I wanted to show Tennessee Ernie on I Love Lucy versus Ernie Ford, the singer who made such a smash with 16 Tons. So here's Ernie playing guitar at 6 a.m.
Listen to the jingle, rumble and the roar. As she rides along the woodland to the hills and by the shore.
That woo at the end just killed me. Because that's when they cut to Lucy and Ricky like literally flop out of bed. Like just like it shocks them to pieces. And they're just I love that they threw in that panic over the baby. Like the baby's still asleep. Like, because that's what I would be doing. I'd be like, oh my
Yeah.
god,
Mhm.
baby's
The
still
baby we
asleep.
never saw.
Oh
Ever.
yeah, no, never saw him, but that's perfectly fine. But this is Ernie Ford doing a short bit of 16 tons with his actual singing voice.
Strong, you load the 16 tons. What do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store.
Like, that is wild. That is two people, or that's one person.
One person. Yeah.
Yeah, I was
So
stunned.
what I learned tonight is that that Tennessee Ernie Ford is the original Larry the Cable Guy, but good.
Yeah.
Oh snap! That's a good
That's a good
observation.
call.
Holy
I was
crap!
thinking the same thing.
Yeah. Well done on that, Travis. That's a really good point. Yeah, Larry the Cable Guy is just doing the same thing but worse.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Fantastic. Yeah, so so Ernie left this world. I think it was in early 2000s, maybe, but left behind some fantastic television, some good moments. I'm actually very curious about the Ford show now. I mean, that thing ran for 5 seasons of a variety show. That's pretty impressive.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That variety shows were big at
Yeah.
that time.
Yeah.
They were a big deal, and so to have the Ford variety show brought to you by Ford,
Like, especially because like we're talking about how we don't have as many commercial breaks back in the day. So
Mhm.
variety shows are a real easy way to get extra commercials in.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's just
Mhm.
one big commercial for something.
Oh yeah.
Kinda. You know what I mean?
You can take a
Basically.
break between skits and nobody's freaking out because they're just imagining
Yeah.
you're setting up for the next thing.
Right.
Mhm.
well, I just recently watched the George Carlin documentary that's on HBO Max.
Oh man.
Which, if you haven't seen that and you like stand-up comedy or George Carlin, watch it. It's amazing. But he did a bunch of different variety shows over time in like the 60s, and they were still big at that point.
Oh
So
yeah.
in the 50s and 60s, that was a huge thing on TV, was variety shows. Everybody had variety shows. People you've never heard of before hosted variety shows with their name on it. So
It's like late night TV now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
very much so.
Yeah. It was a big thing back then. That's kind of just what you put on TV was just variety shows. Like there was the Dean and Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin had a show, and
Oh my gosh.
yeah, the Ford show.
I watched Martin and Lewis is something I watched on Disney what was it? Late night Disney stuff. I watched
Yeah,
them
yeah.
all the freaking time.
Oh yeah. Like I think I'm really excited for when we do get to that variety show
It's gonna be
thing.
good.
I'm really hoping I can find the show I'm thinking of, so we can put it on the show. You got to be able to watch it. That's the problem with this stuff. Like, you got to
That
be
is
able
the
to
hard
find
one.
it.
Mhm.
You know, you can find 100 different shows, but it's not on Hulu or YouTube or somewhere. You're out of luck.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see
We'll go
where.
to shady places and find it.
Yeah, we
So
can.
it's gotta
We'll just
go to
sail
dark web.
We'll sail the 7 seas, if you know what I mean. Well, we'll find a way. But anyway, coming up next, I believe it's Amy's turn to
Sure
host the
is.
show next time. What are we doing,
It
Amy?
sure is. So I like changed my mind on what show we were doing like 2 hours ago.
What?
Yeah, I know I called an audible on this one. So I've taken a turn on this one. We're going to be watching season 1, episode 3 of the new Scooby-Doo movies from 1974, I think. And this episode is called Wednesday is Missing.
Oh,
You
snap.
might be able to guess who the guest stars
Nice.
that appear in
Oh.
this episode are. If you want to watch along, if you Google Wednesday is Missing Scooby-Doo, it's available on Dailymotion, but it's also available on archive.org, which is kind of cool. That it's
Nice.
just like
Interesting.
there.
Yes.
So that's a resource that we might need to tap into a little harder.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a little Scooby-Doo. I thought
I
that'd be a way to run it.
Nice.
I'm so
Special-
glad that you picked this, because I thought very hard about one of the new Scooby-Doo movies
Yep.
for my choice. Because I remember all those Harlem
Yep.
Globetrotters,
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Laurel and Hardy.
Don Knotts,
Laurel and
Laurel and Hardy.
yeah.
I
Tim
picked this one
Conway.
because I specifically did not remember it. And so I was like, well, let's do this one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Nice.
it's a crossover.
It was either this or the Phyllis Diller one.
Oh,
So,
there was
gosh.
Phyllis
Yeah.
Diller or
Yes.
Saint
Uh-huh.
Duncan was another one I
Yep.
thought about.
yeah.
Oh, there's
But
so many good
yeah.
ones.
this is a great one. Oh, I can't wait.
Oh man, I'm
I like
pumped.
this one a lot. It gets pretty meta. It's very good.
No, bring
Um,
it.
I'm so glad we're getting to do this. This show has been an absolute treasure for going back in time and looking at this stuff, and that was a great pick. So if you're out there and you want to check that out, please watch it and send us your thoughts to those were the days show at gmail.com or those days show on Twitter. We did get a little feedback on our Muppets episode, Audie, from Rebecca, who says, I enjoyed the show on The Muppet Show. I love The Muppets, and my kids have really enjoyed rewatching them too. After rewatching your episode, T for Two is still stuck in my head. So thanks, Rebecca. Fantastic. I love that. I love that we're getting people to go watch a thing, and they're like, oh man, I forgot all about this. This is great.
Forgot how great this thing was.
It's so easy to forget, man. It's just there for the taking.
Yep.
You don't need new stuff. I mean, there's new episodes of stuff coming out, but I mean, you got a whole lot of old TV you could watch and just laugh your butt off at. So anyway, that's it for us tonight on Those Were the Days. We have had a wonderful time watching I Love Lucy. Watch Scooby-Doo, the new Scooby-Doo movies, Wednesday's Missing, for next week, and we'll catch you guys right back here, same time, same place. See you, everybody.